All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you and your loved ones are all doing well, staying safe and healthy from wherever you're joining us. Welcome to the previous panel focusing on research in STEM at Williams. I first want to take a moment to congratulate the students in the audience once again on your acceptance to Williams. We were absolutely thrilled to welcome you to the class of 2025 and are excited and hopeful that many of you will join us on campus in the fall. My name is Alejandra Moran. I use she, her pronouns. I serve as an assistant director of admission and I'm a graduate of the class of 2017 at Williams. I am also delighted to be the moderator for today's panel. We've got a great group of people lined up, all with a range of experiences, time at Williams, connections to the institution. So as I briefly introduce them, I hope that they'll wave at you. So you'll be hearing from the Barclay Germain Professor of Natural Philosophy and Director of the Science Center, Tiku Majumder. Jeannie Albrecht, Professor of Computer Science. Associate Professor of Biology, Matt Carter. And Senior Student majoring in Physics, Elena Albert. Great, so we have a few questions and topics to cover today to get the panel started, mostly talking about what differentiates us from other colleges and universities in terms of research opportunities in STEM at Williams. But we'll leave plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So as you listen to the panelists' journeys to Williams, their experiences, their research, their work with fellow faculty and students, please be sure to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to send us your questions. Those questions will come privately and directly to us as panelists, and then we'll just leave time to answer them live at the end. So to get us started, Tiku, I'd love if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself. Give us a broad overview of STEM at Williams, what the institution's commitment to expanding these offerings are here at Williams, and of course, some more specific offerings for the physics department.
Great, thank you, Alejandra. Welcome and congratulations again from all of us. Looking forward to talking more and getting to your questions. So just a very brief overview of my own perspectives. I've been at Williams for about 25 years. I grew up with teachers as parents and always kind of knew that this is what I wanted to end up doing, I think. I am an experimental atomic and laser physicist. I have a lab here in one of our beautiful new science buildings where many, many Williams students have passed through over the years. It's one of the great joys of my career here, has being able to work with students in particular, moving from the classroom into the research lab setting. And I'm sure we'll be talking more about that. So I spent my PhD years at Harvard and then some postdoc years out in Seattle at the University of Washington. And the more I was at large research universities, the more I realized that the best job for me would hopefully be one where I could combine my passion for doing experimental physics research, but also with a chance to teach undergraduates and really have that as a focus. There frankly aren't that many schools that are, in my opinion, the perfect balance of both, and Williams is one of them. And I'm just so happy to be here at a place where I can really enjoy teaching, focus on that, have an institution that's behind me, really doing everything I can do to be the best teacher I can be, and at the same time, support research. And I just wanted to, in my couple of minutes, mention just how impressive it is and how well supported we are to be able to do research at a small college like Williams. It takes a lot to be able to do that. It takes an institution that's obviously has a lot of resources, has a huge commitment and kind of a clear vision about wanting to support science, understanding that science is complicated and expensive, especially on the experimental side to support. It helps to have beautiful new buildings, and guess what? We have two beautiful new buildings, and perhaps you'll have a chance to look at the little video that was prepared about the two new buildings that we prepared recently. So that's a great feature of it, but it also takes faculty really committed to the idea of teaching and doing research with undergraduates. And of course, most of all, it takes wonderful students who are ready, who come to Williams ready to not only study science, but also ready to do science. And that's very much what we're all about here, is making that transition. I'm, as director of the Science Center, I oversee a lot about broadly about what's going on in the sciences. One of the things we've been focused on right now is returning to our traditional summer of really active on-campus research. We sort of did a remote version of that last summer, and that was not ideal from anyone's point of view. And we're really excited to get back to an in-person program. We have a record number of students who will be on campus working directly with faculty this summer. We have about 210 students all in working with faculty throughout every department in math and psychology, computer science, and all the lab sciences as well. So it's really an exciting time at Williams in the summer. That's one way where students get involved in research. Other ways are during the academic year. Once they get to be seniors, they can opt to do senior thesis projects. Also, there's winter study opportunities, especially for that could be something that younger students get involved in, and also research assistantships. So there's lots of ways to get involved. One can get involved from an early point in one's career and kind of test things out and try some different things. So that's something that's really exciting about this place. It's been my pleasure in the physics department to be able to teach a variety of courses, non-majors courses, introductory physics courses. This next fall, I'll be teaching the first semester mechanics course for potential physics majors. Upper level courses, tutorials, which all departments engage in. And then watching students sort of get their first taste of research in labs like mine, and then being able to watch them often grow into really colleagues in the lab, junior colleagues, where we can attend conferences when one can attend conferences, and can publish papers together, and then watching the students go on to really exciting science careers, doing all sorts of really cool things. And just to anticipate a question that I'm sure we'll get, not just doing physics. We really do send a lot of students to interdisciplinary fields that we don't teach at Williams, where they're exceptionally well prepared to do things like engineering and applied science, and subjects that are sort of in between two fields, where they can use all of the training they've gotten at Williams and sort of launch them into those kind of careers. I'll hold off talking about the physics department since we're lucky to have one of our wonderful senior majors here on the panel, and let Alana talk about that from a student's point of view. But I just want to say welcome again. Thanks for coming, and happy to answer questions and get into more details soon. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Tiku. And that was an excellent start to talking about the sciences at Williams. So Jeannie, could you talk a little bit more, of course, about yourself and also what those research opportunities look like from the computer science standpoint?
Sure. So just to introduce myself a little bit more, I'm Jeannie Albrecht. I'm in the computer science department, and I have been at Williams for 14 years. Let's see how my journey. So I started, grew up in Baltimore, was a first generation college student, and went to Gettysburg College, and I majored there in math and computer science. And actually that's important because that's where I fell in love with the liberal arts environment. And so then I went to grad school. I started at Duke and then ended up finishing my PhD at UC San Diego. And I had a bunch of advisors who tried to convince me not to waste my talent and go back to liberal arts school, but I persisted, and I'm very glad I did, because what you find at Williams is a bunch of my colleagues who like to teach and like to do research, and it's just a nice balance of all of that, and that's what I enjoy the most, is being able to do both of those things. So the computer science department is, we have 12 or 13 faculty, depending on the year and depending on how you count, and which is big for a small school comparatively. And I think the department, we really pride ourselves on kind of having a balance of sort of really theoretical, they look like math classes, parts of our curriculum, as well as really applied and interesting kind of much more systems-y types of things. So the required courses, you're going to take a couple classes where you're never actually going to write a single program, right? You're going to end up taking some classes that are very much supposed to build on the theoretical foundations of computer science. But of course, we're going to teach you to program along the way as well. So we have, in terms of research, the research is really varied because we have kind of a bigger department. We have people who do research in theoretical computer science. That's going to look a lot like sitting around and writing proofs and trying to prove aspects of computing that actually don't necessarily have to do with writing a program. We have people like myself who actually really like to write code, okay? And so for us, we build systems, we write software, and we test it and evaluate it. And we have people that are doing machine learning research. So that's this kind of hot new area dealing with really large data sets and trying to solve really hard problems that we have not previously been able to solve using computing and using really clever algorithms to do so. And we even have people now that actually sit kind of at the border of what, more of a social scientist who work on the human computer interaction side of computing. So they may be more evaluating how people interact with computers rather than actually working with computers directly. So in terms of faculty interests and the research that goes on, it kind of runs the gamut, and our classes sort of map to that as well, right? In our electives, you're going to see offerings that kind of cover a wide range of things. Um, our summer research program, so it's part of it, kind of sits under the umbrella that Tiku described, but what it looks like specifically in our department is you spend sort of 8 or 9 weeks working with a faculty member, and each faculty member usually takes 2 or 3 students. And what's really great about doing research in the summer with faculty is that we and the students, faculty and the students, are not distracted by classes. So it's really a fun time to really focus on hard problems and work really closely with your research students without sort of the normal stresses and things that are going to take away from your time. We try to make it fun. I mean, in addition to just kind of the normal summer in Williamstown is actually a fun time anyway. We always go canoeing, and we go get ice cream together. So it's a chance to really kind of get to know the faculty at a different level, and also get to know other students. And it's kind of a fun opportunity. Sometimes you end up writing a paper and getting some really good results. Sometimes it ends up you decide to do a senior thesis. So that's the other opportunities to do research. So other ways you can get involved if you don't work with us during the summer. Students also work with us during the school year for 5 or 10 hours a week, depending on how much time you have. There's also a chance to do a senior thesis, which is a year-long, only for seniors, but a chance to graduate with honors. So lots of cool opportunities. I don't want to take up too much time, so I'll stop there. But certainly ask me more questions if you have specific CS-related questions about that.
Thank you so much, Jeannie. And Matt, would love if you could also talk a little bit more about yourself and then share from the biology standpoint.
Definitely. Well, I'll add my congratulations to all of you for getting into Williams. I'm looking forward to meeting you when you arrive in the fall. And my comments really just echo those of my colleagues Tiku and Jeannie. I had a similar trajectory towards Williams College, where I went to graduate school at Stanford and then did a 3-year postdoc at the University of Washington in Seattle. And I loved the research I did. I love the research I do now. And I faced this dilemma when I was a postdoc, because I knew I really enjoyed my research, but I also love to teach a lot, and I was really looking for a place where I could really do a lot of teaching, which most people don't do at the university institutional level. And like Jeannie, I was told that if I went to a liberal arts college that I would never be able to do research and excel in research. And Williams for me has just been the place where I've been able to have my cake and eat it too. I really think the way I usually describe this to my friends and my family is that if I made a Venn diagram, and like in one circle I put all the colleges I could have gone to as a professor where I could do really great teaching and really great get to know students. And then in another circle, I could put a diagram of all the places I could have gone as a scientist to do really great research. I really feel that Williams is in that tiny sliver where the two circles overlap. And I really feel like I get to do the science that I want to do. And I also get to meet people and teach the classes that I want to do in the biology department. And Williams has provided the infrastructure to do that research. And I think that's what makes Williams unique at the undergraduate level, is the work that I do. We use mice in my lab to study hunger. And in order to do this, I have a neuroscience background. So I teach classes in neuroscience and physiology, but the research that I do, we need to work with lab animals. We work with lasers. We work with confocal microscopes. We use transgenic animals, all sorts of stuff that doesn't usually exist at the undergraduate level. And so I really feel like the infrastructure at Williams and the amount of resources that are put into doing research here has just sort of allowed me to be in this perfect spot where I can teach these classes that I really enjoy teaching at a low class size, but then also work with undergraduates in the lab. And like Tiku and Jeannie said, I guess I could just echo and say that we have thesis opportunities in biology for people to do a senior honors thesis. We work with students over the summer. We work with students as independent studies, so people could work in the lab and get course credit for that. We just work with students in none of those capacities. Just if people want to work in the lab, you can work in the lab and we'll work something out. We also help students find opportunities outside of Williams too. So as much as I love to work with Williams students here at Williams, sometimes it's nice to do a summer stint somewhere else, maybe before your sophomore or your junior year or your senior year. So we work with people to try to find great internships throughout the country. But then I really love doing the research I do with students. And, like Jeannie said, I was just discouraged from coming to a liberal arts school because the idea was I wouldn't be able to do great research. And I thought the best way to get back at my advisors for saying that to me would be to produce great research. And so that's what I've done. And I've tried to convince them that, oh, hey, check out the papers that we're doing, and that'll answer your question as to whether we can do this now. And so a lot of the students who I've worked with now are often medical schools, graduate schools. It's been really fun for me to see a lot of my former students now actually enter my field. That was something that I knew would happen, but I didn't really quite predict just the degree of joy I would get out of that, of going to conferences now with my current students and meeting my former students, and we all have a big lunch or dinner together while we're at the conference. It's really great. I guess the courses that we offer here are all ranges in biology. There are more biomedical oriented courses. There's more ecological, evolutionary biology oriented courses, and people can usually find the right combination of classes that meet their interests. And a lot of our graduates go off to medical schools, graduate schools, and as Tiku said, multidisciplinary experiences that lend themselves to all sorts of great things that they do when they graduate. But maybe I'll stop there too, because I want to hear what people's questions are. But just like people have said, it's just been my dream to come here and get to know people and work with them directly, and that's exactly what's happened. So I'm looking forward to doing that with some of you.
Great, thank you all so much. Alana, I'd love if, all of these professors have talked about their ability to work with students really closely, and would love to hear a little bit more, of course, about you and how you get started in doing research at Williams. Was it being a teaching assistant, research assistant, and then I know that you're going to graduate school after this year. So of course, talk a little bit more about what doing research at Williams, how that helped you choose to actually continue pursuing graduate studies.
Yeah, great. Hello, everyone. Congratulations. And also, I'm super jealous of you all for you starting your 4 years at Williams rather than finishing. But yeah, so I'm a senior. I'm a physics and philosophy double major. I started research the spring of my sophomore year. And so before that, I had just been in physics classes, but the research opportunities are just so easy to get because you just go in and talk to professors in their offices. It's really kind of that easy. And the professors are so approachable and their offices are all together. So you can kind of go around and there's a bit of a shopping period. So you can go and see different labs and go in different lab meetings and stuff like that. So spring of sophomore year, I just started going to lab meetings with my group, the Kellifer group. And then I was here the summer of going into my junior year, and the summer then going into my senior year, I was on campus, but just because I live off campus, we didn't have an on-campus summer, unfortunately. So yeah, I just did research. I was also a TA. And so that was really great because I got to almost relearn some of the information that I learned during the first couple of years, and also get sort of a taste for what teaching might be like, which was fantastic and definitely something that I could see on my horizon should it come my way. But yeah, research has been great. I think that one of the most important things about Williams is that it's, again, so easy to get. Bigger institutions, I know some of my friends have had a really hard time finding research available. And because we're only an undergraduate institution, it's available for all of us starting as early as your freshman year. And I think the professors definitely know that they're dealing with undergraduates as well. And so the expectations are that you'll learn as you go and that you don't need to have any prior experience. I didn't have any prior experience going into my lab, but it was just, you have to be gung-ho about it, and that's about all. So yeah, from there, I've decided to go to graduate school. Having research and having a senior thesis in my back pocket has been incredibly helpful. Having professors that actually know you, that can write good recommendations, has also been just, yeah, invaluable. Beyond just actually having those professors here, they help you move on to bigger and maybe not better, but definitely bigger things. And so, yeah, I'll be going to graduate school at Northeastern. I can't wait, but that's about all.
Great. And then, Elena, just as a follow-up to to you going to graduate school and doing a thesis. What actually led you to want to do a thesis? Because that's not a requirement here at Williams. So how did you decide that you wanted to actually spend a year doing a physics thesis?
Yeah, so I guess it's definitely advised that if you are thinking about going to graduate school is basically just a lot of research, about 5 to 6 years of research. And so to be able to do an extended project over that year is a really good, test run, first of all, to see if you're actually interested in that. But also it gives grad schools a good idea that you actually can carry out an extended project. And so I thought that I really enjoyed hands-on research. That was definitely some of my favorite parts of lab and class, and also just doing research over the summer and throughout my junior year. I realized that I really enjoyed that part of physics. So I decided, because I knew that I wanted to continue on to grad school, and because I knew that I really enjoyed that part of physics is why I chose to do a thesis.
Great, thank you so much. We're going to move now to do the Q&A portion of the panel. So I've seen some people have already sent questions. As you keep thinking of questions, please keep sending them, and we'll just continue to answer them for the next 20 minutes. But one of the first few questions that was asked is about tutorials. And so Tiku, I know you briefly mentioned tutorials at Williams. Would you like to expand on what tutorials are in general, just for folks that may not know as much yet? And then would love if you could talk about what the format of tutorials would be like in the physics department. Then I'd love for Matt and Jeannie to also talk about them in their departments.
Sure. Several general things. Of course, it's based originally on a sort of Oxford, Cambridge, fairly strict definition of 2 students and a professor, and somebody's writing a paper each week. And it's pretty intense, and it remains a pretty intense thing at Williams. I think many of our students come out of tutorials saying that was one of the hardest courses I ever took, but also one of the most satisfying and educationally best courses I ever took. That's a pretty impressive combination. I think it's important to know that Williams has a pretty big commitment to tutorials, and that has 2 consequences. One thing is that it's a very, if I could use this term, a very expensive way to teach. Not many institutions could afford to teach students on a 2-on-1 basis with faculty teaching in that way. So this is one reason why it's so nice to be in an institution that can, say, have a computer science department with 12 faculty members, or a biology department with nearly 20 faculty members. These large departments allow us to be able to teach creatively, to teach small classes, to be able to, at the same time, have time to get into our labs and work in a way that I would also describe as teaching, which is the research training that we do with students in the lab, especially beginning students. So in physics, a tutorial would not take the same form as it would in a history class or an English class. But what we do instead is focus on problem solving. So we focus on giving students really challenging problems to work on their own. They come in with those problems partly done. They come in, they go up to the board, they explain what they've done. Ilana cannot, I'm sure, has been through this in several iterations. Here's what I did, here's what I was thinking. And oh, by the way, when I got to part D, I wasn't exactly sure what to do. But I can articulate what I was confused about and how. And if professor is able to just like do the just-in-time thing of basically saying, okay, let's deal with the particular question that you have about that subject, which may be quite different than the next tutorial pair that's going to arrive in an hour or the next day. So you can really tailor things to individual students. And it's just a terrific way to learn. You come up against the wall, you kind of get over some of it, and then you have a thing that's just unclear, and you can just address that very directly. So it takes a different form. I'm sure Jeannie and Matt will describe slightly other ways that this happens. If there was an English colleague on the panel, she or he would say, "Oh yes, well we are writing papers and critiquing papers every week," and so it takes different forms. But anyway, it's a terrific thing. But what really makes it special is that Williams can basically support and afford to teach in this way in every department throughout the college. Thanks.
I'll chime in quickly because I'm going to try to make sure we can answer as many questions. So some of our tutorials have a format similar to as Tiku described, where it's problem solving. We're reading a hard paper. We work through the problems together. Again, a little bit more mathy, a little bit more theoretical. Some of our tutorials are building big pieces of software spread out over the semester and sometimes working in a team. So this is kind of fun. We have one where it's a 400 level tutorial. It's one of our most advanced electives. And the whole class, which is only 10 students, meets together in a lab for a couple hours a week. And then they all kind of divide up pieces of what they're working on and they go off and work on it. They meet individually with the faculty member at some point to talk about what they're doing. But at the end of the semester, they have built a very impressive, large piece of software that, so the one I'm thinking of is a compilers class. They actually built an entire compiler. And so it's really cool. It encourages a lot of skills, sort of software engineering, and also working in a team and in ways that other courses don't have the opportunity to do so. And yet another type of tutorial is actually one that I teach when I get a chance to. It's a 100 level tutorial for non-majors. It's actually called the Socio-Techno Web. And I love it because it is completely different every time I teach it. We just spend time talking about it. Anyone can take it. It's completely accessible. In fact, I give priority to people who haven't taken computer science. But I provide a little bit of technical background, and then we read kind of really controversial popular press articles sometimes. And then I have the students debate, right? So I have them each intentionally, and this is a little bit more of the traditional format where they each kind of take a stance and then they have to kind of provide arguments and refute each other. So it's really fun. Every conversation is different. Every time I offer it, it's different. And there's always really interesting things happening in the world that makes it really good fodder for the class.
I could just quickly say, so we can move on to other questions, that's exactly what biology is like, just what Tiku and Jeannie said, that we have a variety of different kinds of tutorials. We try to offer tutorials for multiple different classes as well. So there's some that are mostly taken by junior and senior students, and then we have a lot that are offered for specifically sophomores. We don't offer very many to first year students just because there's an intro sequence that we do that we like everyone to have a foundational knowledge but before they take that. But we offer a lot for sophomores so that they could use those skills they got in the tutorial and then adapt them later on. And some of them are more reading primary literature. Some of them are doing experiments, and so they take the form of the class and the specific goals of the class. And I like that we can adapt these low student to faculty ratios for a variety of different kinds of classes depending on the kind of field, and use our own creativity to really make it the best experience that we can. But I'll stop there just so we can move on.
Great, thank you so much. We also have a few questions talking about the 3-2 pre-engineering program. And so Williams does not offer any majors in engineering, but we do have a 3-2 or a 2-1-1-1 program in engineering. So Tiku, would you like to talk about what that engineering program looks like, the pros and cons of doing such a program? And then Alana, I'm also curious because I believe your graduate studies will be in bioengineering. So why did you decide maybe not to take this track and instead pursue it as a graduate studies? So Tiku, if you could please.
Sure, we get this question a lot, and we do indeed have on the books a formal 3-2 program for a couple of institutions, including Columbia. Every couple of years, maybe somebody takes advantage of that opportunity. But to be, and that we have other sorts of the 2-1-1-1. What Alejandra means there is you kind of go away junior year, away somewhere, and maybe to an institution where you could take engineering type courses, come back, do your senior year at Williams, maybe do a thesis, do whatever you're going to do, and then go back for a 5th year to complete that program. This would get you kind of formal training in engineering. You could do electrical engineering, mechanical engineering. Let me just say that far more commonly, we have students who pursue engineering or related disciplines after graduation with either very little or zero background in formal engineering courses. They've done their major in CS or biology or physics or math, and they decided to go in a direction where they can build off of that. They might have to go take it like in a PhD program, you might have to go and take an extra class or two that maybe some of your classmates who were engineering majors as undergrads have already taken. But those classes tend to be, fill in gaps, but there's such a strong basic math science background that students are coming with from Williams that generally find those to be very handleable. And then very quickly, they're on the same kind of point. They're at the same point. And because of the emphasis on research that they've often gotten at Williams, they're really ready to get into research, which in engineering, if you're doing like a PhD, it looks an awful lot like experimental physics, frankly. So just to summarize, it's much more common. And also, I'll just point out that people tend to love being at Williams. And after 2 years, the idea of leaving Williams to not graduate from Williams, but leave for good for or after 3 years or whatever it is just it just turns out to be a decision that very few students take. So anyway, but it is on the books, and we do advise. We have a pre-engineering advisor who can work through those questions with you, including things like summer opportunities if you're looking for summer opportunities that would be more focused on that.
Yeah, so quite honestly, I don't think I was aware of that my freshman year. And I also know going to Williams, I knew that I didn't just want to do physics or engineering or something like that. Like I chose physics because of the liberal arts nature, and I got a philosophy major out of that as well. And so to me, I didn't even know going into freshman year, I didn't have my stuff together quite as much as some other people might, that I really wanted to do physics. And so being able to explore different areas and different classes was really important to me. And again, like part of the reason why I wanted to go to Williams rather than a school that allows you to specialize earlier.
Great, thank you. And so to switch gears a little bit, more specifically to computer science, Jeannie, there's a question about if you could talk about some data science offerings, particularly in the intersection of statistics and computer science, and maybe what some of those research opportunities look like as well.
Yeah, so this is actually, it's a hot area right now that we're actually still figuring out at Williams, kind of formally. So there's, we've been in discussions, and COVID kind of did delay those a little bit, about what it actually should look like. Should there actually be, we don't have minors at Williams, but something like a program or a concentration or something that basically allowed students to kind of formally study data science. Until that happens, which may happen soon, right? We're working on that. We have a lot of students who are interested in data science, and typically what they end up taking is a combination of statistics and computer science. And whether they're statistics and then they take a little CS, or they're CS and they take a little statistics, there's kind of interesting ways you can combine those two, or courses from those two departments. In terms of electives, if you're interested in data science, I'd say come talk to one of either the CS or the stat faculty, because we'll probably give you the same advice, or talk to both, even better. But there's certain electives that are certainly going to be, even more at the intersection. So on the computer science side, we just hired actually this year 2 people who do machine learning, which is kind of sits at the intersection of data science, or of statistics and computer science, and really kind of digs into data science some more. So I think fundamentally, what is data science? It's some combination of the skills that you get in statistics and computer science, but there's also a third component, which is the context at which you're applying them. And so the nice thing about Williams is there's lots of opportunities for that, right? I mean, we've been talking to faculty in divisions 1 and 2 about, data sets and problems that they're working on involving big data that we could possibly, use to explore some of these ideas. So, if you're interested in data science, take some CS, take some stats, figure out whether you want to do stats or CS in terms of majoring, but then you probably also want to explore from one of these other fields, right? Because you're at Williams, you can do that. And that'll help you really appreciate, how do you apply these skills in the real world context, which is really what a data scientist is trying to do.
Great, wonderful, thank you. Matt, the next question is coming to you, and it's actually having to do with pre-med support at Williams. And this is just, naturally many pre-med students will take classes in biology and neuroscience. So can you talk a little bit more about what, faculty support looks like for pre-med students, what some of the internship opportunities and shadowing experiences look like?
Sure. I meet a lot of pre-med students, just given my roles in the physiology class and the neuroscience program. I meet dozens of people who are interested in going to medical school, and they're very successful at it. I think on any given year, I think that the numbers that I've heard are 50 to 60 people apply to medical school, but that's not just current Williams seniors. That's also a lot of Williams alumni who've taken some years off to work to do clinical research or lab research. There's a lot of support. I mean, I guess I would say that there's pre-med people who have a pre-med interest. There's a sort of a difficult set of prerequisites that medical schools require. And there's a pre-health coordinator who can help people walk through those prerequisites. And a lot of the faculty who teach those prerequisite courses, courses in chemistry, biology, physics, math, we talk to each other a lot. We're aware of what the prerequisites are so that we can help people who are specifically interested in completing those prerequisites. It turns out you can major in whatever you want to, and you can apply to medical school. Sometimes people think that you have to have a pre-med major, which is something that bigger universities have. We don't have a pre-med major, but a pre-med major is absolutely not necessary. You can major in anything, English, philosophy, and as long as you complete those prerequisites, then you're fine. And so the pre-health coordinator, Rebecca Counter, works with students one-on-one. You can make an appointment as soon as you get here to meet her. She's really approachable, and she'll help you walk you through the prerequisites. And over your course, then you can just sort of build up not just those prerequisites, but a set of experiences. People, again, during their 4 years here, have the ability to do research here. Thesis opportunities are obviously not just for people who are thinking of going on to a PhD program or doing research. There's a lot of pre-med students who do research, and they find a lot of great internships over the summers. And there's a lot of great things just for people who are interested in the medical field that we know about, that we can help refer to people to as well. But was there another part of the question? I guess I'm just wondering if there's something more about reason. But the acceptance rates are about as off the charts as one can get. I can actually say I've been here for 8 years. I don't know a single student who applied to medical school who didn't wind up getting into medical school at some point. The admissions rates are really low in terms of, to get into medical school. I think the typical medical school acceptance rate is somewhere, I don't want to scare anyone, but it's usually like 5, 10, 15% nationwide. But the pre-med coordinator here does a great job walking people through what you need to do to be competitive. And I really mean it. I don't know a single Williams student who wanted to go to medical school who did not eventually achieve their goals of getting there. And as Alana pointed out too, because our student to faculty ratio is so small, the recommendations we can write for people going off into medical school and the context with which we know people are great. And actually the opportunities we're able to provide is great too. This is the last thing I was going to say, is that during the winter study period, there's actually a lot of great opportunities for pre-med students to do shadowing locally in town. Williams has a nice program where we work with local doctors so that you can shadow a physician for 3 or 4 weeks, and that will count as your winter study course. And there's a variety of other shadowing, internship, even classes, medical ethics that you can take during winter study that counts as well. So yeah, if you're interested in pre-med, I'd be happy to answer specific questions over email or anything, but chances are I'll meet you anyway. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you so much, Matt. And to answer the acceptance rate a little bit more specifically, I believe it's about 85 to 90% acceptance rate to medical school. And as you mentioned, it's not just current Williams seniors who are applying to medical school. Many of them are actually alumni who are applying 2-3 years after graduating from Williams. And the great thing, as you all have mentioned, is that the letters of recommendation will come in really strongly, even after you've been at a school for a couple of years, because you form those close connections with your professors, and the pre-health advisor and committee are very much willing to help out, even after you've been out of school for a few years. So thank you for that. We also have a few questions and talking again about the accessibility of getting started in these research opportunities. So Lana, I know that you started as a teaching assistant and as a research assistant. Could you expand a little bit more on how you were able to actually get these opportunities, how you approached your professors?
Yeah. So again, I would just like to emphasize, you don't need to have any prior experience to start working in a lab. I didn't have any prior experience. And I guess the way that I approached it was just to shoot emails to some professors that I had already had in class, or, even if you don't have a professor in class, you end up meeting a lot of people. And so even if I hadn't had a professor in class, chances are I already knew their face and they kind of knew mine just based on doing work in the South Science lobby. And so, yeah, just reaching out to different professors. There's generally a time sort of right before the summer research starts that a lot of students start to take lab tours and get interested in lab research. And so professors are already kind of ready for those emails to start coming. But even if you're not in that time, you can still shoot an email to a professor. And I mean, I haven't had a professor that was unhappy to walk me through their lab. It's just so lovely and fun. And even if you don't end up working in that lab, it's really cool to just learn about the different research that's going on. So I guess that's not a super structured answer, but I hope that it comes across that it's really easy to do. All you need to do is just reach out to different professors.
Yeah, and the other part that I'd like to elaborate on too is that teaching assistants at Williams. So as Alana alluded to earlier, we don't have any we only have 2 graduate programs. One is in economics, one is in art history. And so the great majority of the other departments don't have any graduate students, which means that we also rely on our undergraduate students to be teaching assistants within labs. So these are students who've taken the classes before, and professors choose them to essentially be mentors and leaders in the lab sections. So just wanted to elaborate on that, this is another great opportunity to get paid and also have an opportunity to continue doing research in those lab sections. We also have a question about what kinds of companies recruit STEM students out of Williams. So Tiku, would you like to take this question? And then if anyone else wants to chime in.
Well, this is a really good question, but one that's very difficult to answer broadly. It's very, very discipline specific. I think Jeannie would probably have some some familiar names that she could name. I think I know the name of the company that's the #1 employer of Williams students these days, and you probably wouldn't be surprised to hear what it is. But it really is discipline specific. And in our department, for example, it's probably more common rather than to do companies. We could do people do summer internships. We have connections with people we know at national labs and other sorts of industrial lab settings that we've connected students to, especially if they're thinking about maybe working for a year or 2 before graduate school or considering grad school. But in our department, and this is not typical of every department, we send more than half of our students to PhD programs after Williams. So that's one of the main things. Other students end up going to teaching or other sorts of scientific consulting or technical jobs. But we really, I think that the answer is really one by one. We try to deal with each student and what they're interested in. And the great thing is that you could get to know your CS professor or your bio professor. And if that's where you're looking, you can get very directed, specific information about what the opportunities are. So I don't know, Jeannie, do you want to say a word about companies?
Yeah, I mean, am I allowed to just say companies? I will just, okay. There's like rules here. So, Google, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, IBM, they all come and recruit our students. Actually, they come to us. So there is a big sort of career event that the college puts on. And then in our department, alums actually come back and specifically want our students, because it's a little bit funny, but when these companies come, they really want CS majors sometimes. And so they actually hide from the Career Center, which we've been discouraging. We're actually trying to, so we now have a relationship with the Career Center to make this a bigger event, because sometimes the alums come back to like, oh, we're visiting, and it turns out, oh, we're going to also recruit while we're here. And it's like, so, but this is to say that, I think despite the fact that we're somewhat geographically isolated, technology has made it such that it's helped really, connect students to companies in many different ways. And I suspect we're going to see even more of that now that everyone's so good at Zoom. Sometimes they come to us, and I think the alumni network is incredibly helpful at Williams, right? I think that the alums are always willing to help you, just go into the alumni network, send an email to someone at a company you're interested in, and I mean, they almost always respond with good advice. So I think there's lots of opportunities. I think depending on your interest, you can always find a company or someone who can at least point you in the right direction for the career that you want.
Great. And unfortunately, we are out of time for questions. And I know that if you want to hear more about what Williams as a launching pad looks like and what opportunities look like post-graduation for jobs, for graduate school, we have an event tomorrow that is specifically for that. You'll get to hear from 2 amazing alumni and also from our Career Center. So please be sure to tune into that. But I also want to thank our panelists again today for taking some time to talk to us about research opportunities at Williams and STEM. I just want to say that also coming next is the panel on research opportunities in humanities and social sciences. So please be sure to tune into that as well. And thank you all, the students, the audience, everyone for tuning in. And I hope you all have a safe rest of your day. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.